father is a fearless man. He is the type to not take any tomfoolery from people, whether it's from strangers or even close relatives. He's a very level-headed man, with friends from distant places. Now, in my country, we are a bunch of superstitious people. The supernatural is deeply embedded into our blood, into our culture. We believe that black magic and curses befall people, or can be cast or thrown at people. But this is not that type of story. The jungles here are dense and old. When we want to do anything in these jungles, we believe in asking our ancestors permission. Be it camping or relieving ourselves, we always ask permission. Otok nenek, kukunak buong, kesel tau, roughly translating to, grandfather, grandmother, I need to relieve myself, okay? And we would continue on with our business. If we didn't do that, it is said that a week of fevers and bad luck will be upon you. Creatures and ghouls are a common topic from where I'm from. We talk about them to warn people before they do anything, or to be more aware of their surroundings. Back to my father. When he was a little younger, back in 1992, he wanted to go camping with his buddies in the jungle reservations. They were geared up and packed for a week to trek through the jungle to their destination. They carpooled with a couple of 4x4 Jeeps, and they were generally excited, having a good time on their journey. They reached the reservation a little late, but they were confident that they could find their camping destination still. At the time, it was near midnight. They were still nowhere near where they wanted to be. Along the beaten path that they drove through, they suddenly saw in the Jeep's headlights in front of them a figure. They described it as thin and pale, with legs bent in a squatting position low to the ground. They stopped a little more than 10 to 15 meters away. They were quiet in the Jeep, not a word passing between them, the creatures of the night around them chirping and scuttling in the dark. Then they saw that creature beginning to move. It must have realized that it had company now, as its head slowly turned towards them. But how could it know? Because apparently it had no eyes and no ears to sense them with. They searched all over its body, but they did not find anything that could be a mouth or even a nose. What they were looking at appeared to just simply be an eerily human-like figure, alarmingly thin, with limbs longer than any normal human person. It slowly stood, its movement smooth and calculated, as if it didn't want to spook them. They could see its thin arms and long claws, skin almost glimmering in the dark, reflecting the Jeep's headlights. Then it began to walk towards them, slow, almost non-threatening looking, like a big cat stalking prey. They froze with fear, just staring at this thing as it came closer to them. Quickly, my father came to his senses and slapped his friend who was driving to get him to reverse. He then leaned out the Jeep window and signaled his friends in the other Jeep to get out of there quickly. They all did so, slightly faster, driving carefully so as to not hit a tree, or else they might swerve right into their deaths. They didn't stop until they left the reserve. They booked it out of there the moment they hit asphalt. This happened in a small town with a man-made pond. I won't say the name, but some can probably guess from that. My cousin, my brother, and I went for a hike, like we normally do around the pond. We usually go out around 8 p.m. We did our normal loop, but I convinced both of them to go down the less bright road. I grew up here, hiking and camping in the area, so I knew the area, and I knew all the people down the road, all around 20 of them. So we walked down the road, and when I say it wasn't well lit, that's because the street lamps were spaced farther apart. We soon hit our first dark space, where the lamps didn't light up around maybe 2 yards. My cousin decided to yell, "Oh no," like something happened to him. I turned around to see him throwing a rock like an idiot. I knew it was him trying to scare me or prank me, and to be honest, I get scared easily. "I just saw you throw that," I said. He looked at me and smiled, calling me a dummy. We continued to walk on. We were getting close to the part in the road with crappy signal. At least the lighting was better here. From there, we could hear the river nearby, which was drowned out by our stupid jokes and conversations. For the first time in 20 minutes, though, I began to feel as if I was being watched. I couldn't help but glance here and there over my shoulder into the dark woods. Everything seemed pretty quiet. Eventually, my gaze was led over the river. I looked up and down it, and that's when I first saw it. Whatever it was looking at us, motionless. I squinted my eyes, then pushed it off. I figured it was probably just me being paranoid. I was making shapes out of nothing. We kept walking until we got to the more populated area near a road that leads to the highway. We stopped to sit and rest for a while. By then it was 9 p.m. We'd been walking for about an hour. My cell phone service was back, so I sent a text to my grandma that we'd likely be back around 10 or 10:30 p.m., depending on whether or not we decided to stop at the small pond on the way back. After a few more restful minutes, we began walking back. We walked a bit slower, because to us 10 minutes was not enough time for rest from a 3-mile walk. Not too long after that, I saw that strange figure again. It was in the water near our side of the river now. Then I was certain it wasn't just a shape I was making out of nothing. We kept walking, and I was now scared beyond thought. I then could hear it move out of the water. I decided then to tell my brother and cousin about it. "Guys, someone is following us. I think it's a person." They looked and laughed. "Sure, why would we believe that?" my cousin said in a mocking tone, my brother just giggling. We continued on, and I kept looking behind us every few moments. I would see that thing every few glances, leaning out from around a tree to look at us. It got closer every time, too. And then I heard it growl towards the end of the dead signal zone. "What was that?" my cousin asked. He had heard it too. I knew it could only be one thing. That darned thing that was following us. Altogether then, we ran until we made it to an area where there were houses closer together. We stopped then to catch our breaths. I hadn't noticed until I caught my breath, but I was crying. My brother was fine, but we were all shaken up at least somewhat. I noticed my cousin was bleeding. He said it was because he fell while we ran. Once we got back to the town, we sat on the beach, looking at the entrance of the road. Nothing came out, and no one went in. About a month after this experience, we found bloody marks in the rail guard of a small bridge down my road, and there were handprints on it. Update. I last wrote about this thing a month ago, but today I'll share what I saw only a week back. The only reason why I walked down that road again was because quarantine had me stuck with only my family around me. This time it was only me and my cousin. My brother was still too worried to go out there. I myself thought the thing would have left by now, because the first anyone saw of it was as I stated in my previous post. Now, it wasn't easy getting my cousin to go. I had to bribe him with a $20 bill. The idea was to not go too far, but to still venture down that road somewhat. Maybe hike, maybe camp, who knows. We left after dinner, and God knows what time it was. We didn't go all the way down the road, we only walked a bit, in the direction that leads to my friend's house. I even called her up and asked if we could go onto her property, and she was okay with it. Around 10 minutes into the trails, we began to hear sticks snapping behind us. I quickly remembered what had happened last time. I didn't wait around at all. I began sprinting away until I heard, "It's just me." I turned around, seeing that it was my brother who had decided to come and join us. I yelled at him to never do that again. About an hour into the walk, being under a canopy of trees, it got dark fast. My brother and cousin were now fooling around, yelling dumb things to each other. "It's just me." I turned to look at my brother and mockingly said, "We know you already said that." But he was looking deep into the forest, like a deer in headlights. I didn't say it that time. I looked in the direction he was looking, but I didn't see anything. "Come on, let's get to the road." We began to hurry down the trail, and as if it was a horror movie, I tripped. I stood up and checked myself. I could still walk. My arm hurt quite a bit, but there was no blood. I stood up and began to walk down the trail. "It's just me." The voice came again. I ignored it, but I ended up tripping once more, not as hard this time. But with how scared I was, I ended up curling up in a ball, and I just lay there. As much as I hate to admit it, I began to cry. The voice got closer, saying the same thing over and over. I sat there, and eventually I passed out. I woke up and looked around. There it was. Even in the dimming light, I was able to see it clearly. It was taller than I thought when I first saw it. It looked to stand around 8 feet tall. It was ungodly pale, a sickish grin on its face, and it looked as if there was nothing where its eyes should be. It opened its mouth, and out came the words, "It's just me. It's just me." Then I passed out again. When I came to, I was near a rock circle. Freaking out, I looked around to see my cousin and brother sitting on one of the rocks. "Where are we?" They looked at me. "It's our normal spot." I started to look around again. It was our normal spot. I guess I've never seen it at night. What happened? They explained how they found me a few feet off the trail, passed out. They brought me here, as they knew it was close. We camped there, under our base that we made a year ago. We built it because we were bored, and being the oldest, I had brought out a bunch of camping stuff. We had found this area back then that was like a circle. It was near a shallow cave thing or overhang, and at night if you didn't know the area well, you might fall in the shallow pool of water. We turned our lantern on, talking about everything that happened, preparing to be yelled at by our parents for not coming back that night. Most of that night was spent in the hangover behind the stick lean-to walls, putting band-aids on my cuts. In the morning, we began to walk back home. Nothing out of the ordinary happened then. And as we had guessed, we did get reprimanded when we got back. But I truly will never forget what I saw. I know the story I'm about to tell you is going to sound similar to what you might see in movies, but it really happened to me. This event made me realize some fictional movies have more truth to them than what you'd think. Back when I was around 16 or so, I was obsessed with the occult. Scary movies, unexplained footage, ghost hunting shows, you name it, and I've seen or heard of it. I had a friend with similar interests who enjoyed watching scary movies with me. One day, we were home alone after school at my house. We decided it would be fun to light a circle of candles and see if we could make contact with any spirits. We decided my room would be the best place because I only had one door and 2 windows that would need closed or covered. My room was on the 2nd floor, and he had to go through my little sister's room to get to mine. It was a bonus room built above the garage. We lit a large circle of small candles and sat in the middle. We held hands and chanted for the spirits to communicate with us while we recorded everything with our phones. For a while, nothing happened, and we just sat and stared at the candle lights. Suddenly, the candles began to flicker and move. At first, we tried to blame each other. We looked around, checking if the windows and doors were truly shut. We even went as far as blocking the slit under the door with towels before we began, so we knew there could not be any drafts. Suddenly, the candles blew completely sideways in a perfect circle around us. My friend thought it would be cool to ask questions and give the spirits directions on how to communicate with us. She said something like, "Move the candles to the left or right for yes or no." She asked if we were speaking to a man, and the candles flickered to the side that meant yes. She then asked if he was friendly, and the candles again flickered to the side that said yes. We began to have fun with it, asking a few more questions that were getting sillier by the minute. We were just a couple of teens messing around, after all. Suddenly, all the candles stopped moving, and nothing happened for a few minutes. As we were losing interest and about to stop the whole thing, we started to hear knocking coming from downstairs. Not someone knocking on the front door or anything consistent, but occasional knocking through the whole house every few seconds. It would have been impossible for someone to run around without us hearing them, knocking on the different places throughout the house. They started out faint but grew in intensity, until it sounded as if someone was hitting the walls with a baseball bat. We started to panic, and I yelled out for my parents, hoping it was just one of them. But no one answered me back. Then the house fell silent. We waited in fear, staring at each other. Just when I was about to say we should stop this, we heard loud, crashing steps coming up the stairs. Quickly, we blew the candles out and said the closing saying right before the person made it to the top of the steps. And as suddenly as everything had begun, the house fell silent again. I ran out of my room to the stairs to see if someone was there. But as you would expect from a story like this, the house was empty. I checked both floors and even the basement and garage, but nobody else was home. I even called my parents, but they both assured me that they were still at work. This whole ordeal lasted about 15 minutes, but it felt like a lifetime. When we played the recordings back, you couldn't hear any knocking, but there were faint screams that we couldn't hear while they happened. You could also hear the stomping up the stairs on the recording. That was the first and last time I ever tried to communicate with spirits. Be careful who or what you call for, as you never know what will answer you. I was driving home from work one night on a dirt road in rural California outside of Santa Cruz when I spotted a dog, or what I thought was a dog, running along the side of the road. It was running away from me, so I couldn't really see its face at first, but when I pulled up alongside it, it looked at me, and that's when I got the shock of my life. The face of this animal looked like a human, although its eyes were reflecting the light, giving the creature a somewhat rather animalistic appearance. The more I looked, the more I realized that this was actually a person wearing some kind of light gray homemade animal fur outfit and running awkwardly on all fours, like how a child pretending to be a dog might do. The person had a skull on top of their head that might have been a dog or a coyote, with more fur on top of that. I say person because I couldn't really tell if it was male or female. Their body was mostly covered in fur, and their face was painted white and red. It wasn't a very large person, though, as it really did look like a dog at first. After it saw me, it stood up and started slowly walking towards the car. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't move. I felt as if I was under some kind of mind control or something. I couldn't take my eyes off this person. Steadily, they approached my car, one foot in front of the other with their arms down at their side. Then they smiled at me, and I saw that their teeth appeared to have been sharpened down to triangular points. That's when the reality of the situation finally hit me, and I watched with horror as this person reached into their furs, producing a 12-inch kitchen knife. I hit the gas and went bumping down the road, but when I looked in the rearview mirror, I saw that this person was chasing me. And not only that, they were easily keeping pace. I was probably only about 100 yards or so from my driveway when I crashed into a ditch on the side of the road. I looked in the rear view again, but I could no longer see this person. I threw the door open and didn't even bother closing it. I just started running as fast as my legs could carry me, all the way down my driveway and into the geodesic canvas dome tent where I was living at the time. The tent had one clear plastic window that I immediately covered before starting a fire in the stove and grabbing a wooden baseball bat that I had by the door. I could hear something outside the tent, walking around, dragging what I assumed to be that knife along the side of my tent. Suddenly, the knife began stabbing into the canvas fabric. I screamed and hit the exposed blade with my baseball bat. The blade withdrew, leaving a small hole in the tent. I waited a minute before throwing a shirt up over the hole. The dragging sound continued, and it was all I could do not to lose my crap, so to speak. There was no cell service out there, so all I could do was keep the fire alive until I ran out of wood, probably around 2 a.m. By then, I could no longer hear any activity outside, but I dared not fall asleep. I must have dozed off at some point, however, because I awoke to the sound of birds chirping outside. I walked out cautiously and looked down to see a heaping pile of fresh human excrement on the ground. I walked around and inspected the puncture in the side wall of the tent. Sure enough, there were 2 or 3 small holes in the wall. There were some bare footprints in the ground, but it was so muddy, it was difficult to decipher much. I tell you what, though, I got dang near an entire truckload of salt to pour all around the tent, as well as up and down the driveway, and sprinkle throughout the woods as well, just for good measure. I don't know if it was the salt or just good luck, but I never did see that person again.